economy, on the brink of a Great Depression. Millions of people losing their jobs, losing their homes, but even more importantly, losing hope. Remember those long lines you'd see on the television? People lining up in all kinds of vehicles just to get a box of food in their trunk. How quickly we forget. People were hurting. And what did the MAGA crowd want to do? Forget it. Forget it. God, this is the United States of America. The idea that people would have to wait in line an hour, hour and a half to get a box of food in their trunk. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Who's running point on the formula issue at the White House? You mentioned the White House is involved.
I mean, I at the White House, I don't know. I can find out for you and get you a person who's running point, but I don't have a person in name.
One of the things I want to put to rest, everybody looks at me and says, have you ever been on a farm? And I remind them that what nobody knows. I come from the state of Delaware. I represented Delaware for 36 years in the United States Senate before I became vice president. Single largest industry in Delaware and the Delmarva, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia Peninsula, that peninsula that goes down, is agriculture. It's a $4 billion industry. $4 billion, that whole peninsula. And we have more chickens than there are Americans, more broilers.
Maybe it's
entitled to go to school in Afghanistan the same way a boy goes to. You yourself said in August last year that they had nothing to worry about, nothing to be scared about.
The issue of secondary schools education for girls, they are under consideration.
Let me turn, if I may, to the issue of the now compulsory instruction for all women in Afghanistan to wear a full burqa if they go outside.
99% of the Afghan women, they are observing hijab voluntarily.
his brand new show.
That were there and remain there in great danger, a betrayal of all the interpreters and other Afghans who helped the West in their efforts in Afghanistan, but most of all, a terrible betrayal of the Afghani women. And this interview I did with the Taliban official spokesman, Suhail Shaheen, was so disingenuous. He just basically told me a bunch of barefaced lies. And I eventually asked him one simple question. He has 2 daughters. I said, do they go to school? He's in Doha. Yes, he said, they do. And of course, right there is the hypocrisy, which is riddled through the Taliban ethos. One rule for them and their children, another rule for these poor schoolgirls in Afghanistan. Just to be completely clear now, any girl after the age of about 12, 13 is not going to school. And he may say, well, they're entitled to, they're not allowed to. They're not going to school. They are having their education stolen from them after 2 decades of getting used to having one. And then you have this new draconian rule that Afghan women can't go out. In fact, they're told to stay at home. And if they do go out, they can only reveal their eyes. If there's any breach of that rule, then the male relatives or their male employer who may be held responsible, they are the enforcers. And if they don't enforce it, then they themselves face imprisonment. So you're taking really a step back to the dark, medieval.
Push back the other crops.
Yes, and we usually run out of growing season. Yeah. So we can't control that. They can typically produce about 60% as a double crop. But yeah, there's still always risk involved that I'm bearing by myself. A couple things that I wanted to be able to talk about here. What we had just walked through back there.
Yep. Been working, there you go. Please sit down. One of the things I want to put to rest, everybody looks at me and says, have you ever been on a farm? And I remind them that what nobody knows. I come from the state of Delaware, single largest industry in Delaware and the Delmarva, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia Peninsula, that peninsula that goes down, is agriculture. This year, the U.S. Department of Agriculture announced it would invest $250 million to boost fertilizer production. Literally on the plane out here on Air Force One, I turned to Tom and I said, Tom, double that. Make it $500 million. It's so desperately needed. Family, and I mean this sincerely like most of you, where the price of gasoline went up significantly, the price of food went up. That's what we talked about at the dinner table and the kitchen table. I couldn't afford daycare. I couldn't afford child care. Not a joke. I was making $42,000 a year, which was a lot of money as a U.S. Senator. I couldn't afford it. Thank God I got a big family. My dad would say family's the beginning, middle, and the end. Gave them a whole lot of money. We added back 460,000 jobs. Critical state and local workers, educators, firefighters, police officers. Remember those long lines you'd see on television? People lining up in all kinds of vehicles just to get a box of food. How quickly we forget. And what did the MAGA crowd want to do? Forget it. Forget it. People would have to wait in line an hour, hour and a half to get a box of food in their trunk. It's just unbelievable.